To the left-hand side for Vieira, who'll play it through to Gabriel Jesus, who's in here for Arsenal. Gabriel Jesus to finish it off. Oh, what a way to do it! Gabriel Jesus seals the points for Arsenal. He's back, and he's back with a bang.
Into the penalty area it goes. Gabriel's header, and it's into the back of the net. Arsenal take an early lead through Gabriel.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the daily Arsenal podcast with me, Harry Symeou.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to another live episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast with me, your host, Harry Symeou. And I'm delighted to say I've got a very, very special guest alongside me to react to some pretty big news. Phil Costa, welcome to the Chronicles of a Gooner. Good to see you. How are you?
Good, mate. Yeah, I was just bopping along to that little intro, actually. It was giving me like Kate Trinada vibes or something. I was ready for a little barbecue in the back garden, have that blaring. Yeah, good. We were just talking before that it was a relatively quiet day, a couple of little bits and pieces of news here and there. And then all of a sudden, 6 p.m., we've got Smith Rowe to talk about, Calafiori announced. So it's all just gone from 0 to 100, basically. But I guess that's better for the stream, right?
Absolutely. It was a bit annoying for me because, as I said to you off air, I kind of sat down and was racking my brain looking for things that we could talk about, given that we kind of all knew that the Calafiori thing was almost ready to be announced, but it hadn't been yet. And, you know, there's a few links with a couple of other players, but there's nothing really moving, at least as far as we're aware, with any of those potential deals as well. So I made some notes. Great, happy days, ready to start the pod. Went to close my laptop and ping, it came on my phone, Arsenal tweet, and it was the announcement for Riccardo Calafiori. So I think that's the best place to start. Let's dive into it. We've not spoken, I don't think, about this signing. I'm a big Serie A fan. It's the league I watch most outside of the Premier League for sure. I do love a Sunday night 7:45 kickoff and all that. And I've seen a fair bit of him over the last year or so. Really impressed by him at the Euros as well. What's your take on Riccardo Calafiori, and how excited are you about him now being an Arsenal player officially?
Yeah, happy, man. I think it's a really good signing. I don't think I'm alone here, but when the initial links came out, I was a bit Italian player, Italian media were the only ones pushing it. It didn't really hit the UK yet. And I just thought, look, even if Arsenal are interested, Juventus are going to pull their finger out eventually. It made too much sense with Thiago Motta going there. It was like a little reunion. It just made a lot of sense, basically. And Arsenal typically don't shop in Serie A. Italians don't often come to the Premier League. I think even recently there've been a couple of examples. Even Scamacca didn't really work out. So I was hesitant, but then slowly you could see us being a bit more serious about it. People started to pick it up in England. And it became clear quite quickly that we were the only ones really in the race. I know there was interest from Chelsea, Real Madrid, obviously Juventus and a few others. But I was reading the Athletic article that just came out after the signing was announced, and it was James from Gunner Blog talking about how he was only really focused on Arsenal. He wanted to come to Arsenal, so it doesn't feel like a flavor of the month signing. They've watched him for over a year now, it said, and Arteta was really keen to push this one through. So overall, really happy. I think ultimately we've lacked a lot of stability on our left-hand side, whether that be through injury, some players not just being good enough, just a mixture of things. And I think we're looking at Calafiori now to really come in, nail down that position, while also giving us a bit of tactical flexibility in terms of what we can do at centre-back, in terms of him maybe drifting into midfield. So overall, I'm really happy. The figures make sense to me. And really excited to get him in red and see how he fares.
For sure. It is a really, really exciting deal. You look at the value, as you say, the figures do make sense. You know, Arsenal haven't overpaid for this player, in my opinion. I think I've heard a lot of people talking, and myself included at times, about maybe fears of sort of his injury history, perhaps catching up with him at some point. There's been a lot of injuries if you look through them as like in a kind of list format, but actually it's the knee one, right? That if you go back quite a long time, that scares people and worries people. But I think there is, so obviously there's an element of risk to it, but I think the price that we've paid kind of reflects that risk and makes it so it's not the type of risk that you can't, recover from if things go bad on that. So I think it's a really smart signing. I really like him. I think he's a really solid defender, but he's also got so much to offer in possession. And I think that is what Mikel Arteta looks for in his defenders, right? And you're absolutely right to point out that the left-hand side has been a bit of a problem for us. It's been unstable. It sometimes would be Zinchenko, who I think we can all agree excellent on the ball, but perhaps lacking a little bit off of it. Kivior, not really a left back for me, and too much of a centre back to play in that sort of very specific left back role that Mikel Arteta wants. So yeah, totally agree with you. Really, really like this signing. Really, really excited by it. And is he, Phil, the best looking player in the Premier League already? Because what a cool lad. He's not going to struggle on a night out in London, is he?
Yeah, there's a few gifts going around already. It's not often you sign somebody who could be a Zara model and someone in the Italy back four from 2005. So yeah, he's got some standards to uphold. We are handsome FC, I would say, and we've got a couple of people leaving this summer, so we've got to keep the standards high, right? This is a class institution, so the standards have to be maintained. But yeah, really excited. I think he'll give us a lot in terms of how we play. Another big guy, physical guy, but also really nice on the ball, elegant, but can drive forward, very powerful. I mean, we saw it in the game against Croatia when he just stormed through the center of the pitch in, what was it, the 97th minute. He said himself, I don't know where I found that energy from. So he obviously found it from somewhere. And I think we can, look forward to a lot of that next season, because a lot of people might look at him and think you're not the kind of the typical left back. I think many people would consider maybe someone who can get forward, maybe a little bit smaller, can get to the byline a lot easier. But I'm excited in what he can give us, and I think he'll need time. Sometimes I watched him, I researched him, and I feel like he can be he's got puppy energy, just ready to go all the time, eager to push forward. And that might need to be reined in a little bit, but otherwise I think there's a lot of exciting core natural attributes that we can kind of hone and mold to be a really exciting player for us. So otherwise I'm really happy, and I think it was a big one for the club to get over the line.
Just from speaking to people that are obviously way more across Italian football than I am, a lot of them seem to feel like him playing sort of anywhere other than centre back would be a little bit of a shame, given how good he is in that position and the way he's gone on to obviously put himself under the spotlight, given Bologna's rise and his along with that as well. There's no way, is there, Phil, that he breaks up the Gabriel Saliba partnership? We are talking about someone who's very much coming into play at left back, right? That's certainly how I see it.
I would think so, yeah. From the start, I would say there's no need to break up the Saliba Gabriel partnership. I think what we're looking at with Calafiori is essentially what we signed Kivior for, to come in and be potential depth to Gabriel when needed, but at a higher level. And I think now at left back, you see someone in Calafiori who's a lot more natural in the left back position than a Kivior, for example. Ultimately, what I think he brings us is that ability to be the more defensive left back if we need him, with a bit more adventure going forward. So I think in terms of him against Kivior, I see a lot more adventure and bravery going forward than I do, from Calafiori than I do with Kivior. But also he can do the Zinchenko stuff, come inside, be comfortable on the ball, maybe not pass to a similar standard. I think he's more of a carrier than someone who can distribute, but he can play that inverted role with a lot more defensive security. So I just think he's raising the floor of those two positions. I think he'll be more of a rotation option if Gabriel needs to sit down. We've been very lucky with his injury record, to be honest, since he arrived at the club. So I just think it's another versatile physical option for our back four. You think of Yuri and Timber, who we haven't really seen yet at all. Again, can play centre back, can play right back. Ben White the same, Tomiyasu the same. All across that back four, Kivior can play a couple of positions, and now Calafiori can play a couple of positions as well. So overall, I think we're seeing Arteta really narrowing down his group of options. But no, I don't expect him to come in and usurp that sort of left centre back position. Sorry, because it's so settled, and Gabriel's amazing, man. We don't need to break that up.
No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Just on Timber there, because that got me thinking as well. I've been watching the preseason games. I don't know why. Like, preseason games are dull. They're drab. And it's kind of out of desperation to watch the Arsenal more than anything else, because they've been playing at some ungodly hours. And I have to say, it's caught up with me over the course of the last few days. But
mate, I don't know how you've done it. I'm an hour ahead of you as well, and I haven't even bothered to. I just look forward for the little notifications in the morning. Who scored? I got a nice one the other day. Martinelli, 81. Perfect. Catch up with the extended highlights on YouTube. No, not staying up for that.
You're right to do that as well, because I've really made my next days, so the days after the nights, hell, basically. And it's always fallen on like my busiest day of the week. It'll be that I'm up all night the night before. And listen, I've got to say, the Man United game was a lot better than the Bournemouth one. Like, it was a lot more worthwhile in terms of watching it. But I've been watching Jurrien Timber play at centre-back in these games. And I'm interested to know what you think his role is going to look like next season. Because when he came in, initially it looked like we were going to utilise him in that left-back position. At least at that point, that's where it looked like he was going to play the majority of the time. You know, we talked in the end of the season prior about Zinchenko, as good as he is on the ball and as much as he's given us going forward, we have lacked defensively at times, and teams have looked to expose that. And everybody felt, I think, that Timber's arrival was the answer and was the solution to that problem. And people were talking so much about that, it was almost as if they'd forgotten that actually throughout his career, he too had been a centre-back mainly. And if he did play out of position, it tended to be at right back, not left back. Yet here we are with Jurrien Timber, who I think has been put into the bracket of left back by a lot of Arsenal fans, but it doesn't look like he's going to play there, particularly now that Calafiori's coming in. So what do you see his role looking like in the coming season?
Honestly, it's so difficult, because even, you know, when Declan Rice came into the club, I thought he would be a nailed on 6, and look where he ended the season. Even Kai Havertz, I thought they were really going to push this number 8 experiment. Look where he ended the season. So I think what Arteta really wants to do is have 5, 6, 7, 8 options who can play across that back line to suit different game states and opponents, you know, and ultimately Ben White has given us no reason to believe he won't be in that right back spot next season. He's been incredible for us. Again, played through injury in a very difficult phase in January, but what he gives that right side with Ødegaard, with Saka, that triangle is just so telepathic now. They know each other's movements, the overlaps, the little one-touch combination play. I think they are so in sync with each other. So for Timber to come in and break that up is a big ask. But the way you see him play, he's so intense, so destructive, physically strong. It was such a huge shame to lose him last season so early on, because we were just getting a glimpse of him. And then all of a sudden it was snatched away from us. So the way I see it is that back four will be pretty settled. I see Ben White, Saliba, Gabriel, Calafiori starting the season, and then it will be up to the others to kind of force their way in. But we're playing a lot of games. We've got a lot of different teams to play, a lot of different tactical setups. Maybe Arteta would like to play, and there'll be games for Timber. I don't doubt that at all.
Yeah, for sure. I think they'll all get their fair share of minutes, and as you say, plenty of games. And maybe you'll see Mikel Arteta rotate a little bit more than he has done in previous years, because I know that's been a criticism that's often been thrown at him. You know, he doesn't use the squad enough. He doesn't give certain players enough chances, enough opportunities, enough minutes. And a lot of the time, I think that's because he maybe doesn't trust some of those fringe players the way that he trusts the starting 11. And I know you could argue that most teams have that situation, right, where they have a best 11, they have players that are nailed on starters. But I think the more that he raises the floor of the squad, as you put it earlier, the more he will feel comfortable in doing that and turning to alternative options, which may see us become more competitive on multiple fronts, because the Champions League is in an extended format. There's another 2 games in the group stage now. You know, the FA Cup, the Carabao Cup, these are competitions that we probably need to be doing better in, if we're being honest about the situation. So yeah, the fact that he'll have a bigger squad and the ability to do that, I think, is definitely a positive thing. We're going to take a really, really, really brief pause. When we come back, we're going to talk Emile Smith Rowe. I'm finding this one quite difficult emotionally, but he's gone now. Emile Smith Rowe, or he's at least on his way. We can say that at this stage, and we'll get Phil's take on that in just a minute. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe.
You heard the man. Harry Jr. says like and subscribe. It really, really does help. So leave us a like on YouTube if you're watching us. Subscribe to the channel if you're new as well. And if you're listening on audio, leave us a review too. That really, really does help. Okay, Phil, let's talk Emile Smith Rowe now. It was reported earlier on this evening that Fulham have offered a £34 million package for Emile Smith Rowe, and that Arsenal have accepted that. He'll be a club record signing for the Cottagers, and he will travel to meet up with the Fulham team and have his medical before joining their pre-season tour very, very soon. It's a £27 million fixed fee with £7 million worth of add-ons, as is being reported by Sky Sports. First of all, emotionally, how are you feeling about this?
I'm gutted. I'm absolutely gutted about it, because that moment Saka and Smith Rowe both broke through together, that really symbolized for me a change or a turning of the page under Arteta, who was firefighting at that point. You know, I just remember that Chelsea game on Boxing Day. I think we were 15th at the time, really struggling, not playing well at all. And those two came into the team and just gave us a boost, a hit of energy, a shot in the arm. That technical quality, the ability to combine together in the final third. And I've got such a soft spot for players like Smith Rowe. I think he's a very Wenger player, actually, in terms of how he can turn on the ball, combine with a quick 1-2 on the edge of the box. He likes a goal from midfield. And then there was that little purple patch in 2020, 2021, when he scored 10 goals in that season. Was popping up on, you know, from the edge of the box, curling shots into the corner, running into space. And yeah, it's just such a huge shame, because it really hasn't worked out from then. And even since getting the number 10 jersey or the number 10 shirt, there's always been something lacking, whether that's his performances not being quite up to par, his fitness giving us issues, not being trusted or selected by Arteta. And yeah, it's just kind of come to this. I was really happy to see him potentially stay last season. You know, I had a feeling he was maybe on the out. But, you know, it came out quite early on in the summer that the club were behind him. They wanted him to stay. Any moves were going to be rebuffed. And I thought, yes, this is his chance now. But again, injuries. When he was coming back, he wasn't playing. And to be honest, it just seems like time. We've moved past him. As harsh as it sounds, we've moved past him, and it's nothing bad, because we're challenging for titles. And to even get an academy prospect to this point of our journey is a huge accomplishment. And that goes to Reece Nelson, that goes to Eddie Nketiah. And it's no surprise at all that the only one of those four really who's made it is Bukayo Saka, and he is generational. So that's the level you need to be at to make it into this Arsenal team. And unfortunately for Emile, a variety of factors have stopped him from doing so. But ultimately, when you consider the numbers, you consider how he's, or I was going to say how much he's played, but how little he's played, I should probably say. What is it, 3 starts in the last 2 years or something ridiculous like that? We've done very well to get a good fee, and he needs to play. He's 24 years old. Go out there, play your football. I will be supporting Fulham for 36 out of their 38 games next season. And yeah, you know what they say, when you love something, you got to set them free. So I just hope he can stay fit and really show what he's about, because I've got no doubt about the talent whatsoever.
Yeah, I agree with you. When he first broke through, it was brilliant to watch. And there was a time where I would have told you that he's more talented than Bukayo Saka. There was a time where I would have said that. There was a time where I looked at Bukayo Saka and I thought, you know, brilliant young player. He's going to make something of himself for sure. But I looked at Emile Smith Rowe and I felt that he maybe just had a bit more of that X factor. Now, obviously, you know, injuries have played a major part in Emile Smith Rowe's career, and there's no point in trying to shirk away from that. It's played its part. It's wreaked havoc on him, and it's put him in a position where, as you say, Arsenal have moved past him. And it's really, really difficult for him now to find a way back in. I think the fact that the team has evolved in the way it plays and the way it approaches games has also, worked against him. If you think about that period where he was playing really well, he was playing a lot, wasn't he, from that left-hand side coming in field. And you think about sort of what Martinelli brings to the team and the width that he gives you, and the fact that you need someone at times to stay high and wide, especially when your left back's going to invert. That probably didn't really suit Emile Smith Rowe. So maybe Arteta felt, I can't really use him there. I've heard people say use him as a left 8. To me, that doesn't really fit either. That's a square peg in a round hole. And as a result of that, the team's evolved, the team's moved forward, and this is best for everybody. I think you're right to say that the fee is brilliant, because as good as we can sit here and say Emile Smith Rowe is, the fact that he's barely kicked the ball for 2 years, that massively impacts his value. So for a club to come in and offer that kind of money is something that I think as a football club, we've got to bite at. We've got to jump at.
It's a club record deal. It's a club record signing for Fulham. And I think it falls just short of what we sold Oxlade-Chamberlain for to Liverpool all those years back. So Fulham, they are gambling on potential here. And yes, we know that he's a really good player. Who I think at Fulham he'll get the opportunity to play a bit more in a natural position, offensive position, maybe just off the striker. I think they've got Anthony Robinson on the left-hand side, who's a lot more analogous to, let's say, a Kieran Tierney or a Nuno Tavares, who were first playing when he broke into the side. A lot more proactive, like to get in behind on the overlap. But you're right, we just evolved past him, and I don't think his off-the-ball work has been up to the required standard as well. He doesn't quite fit in the 8 role. He doesn't quite fit in the left, on the left side. And his body's changed a lot. I mean, he's tall now. I think you see him lining up against some of these guys in our team, even at the stadium when you go and see him. He's 6 foot, 6'1". I mean, he's a tall guy, big guy. I think he needs to shed a bit of timber as well. Speaking of timber from before, but
me and him
once
both.
he gets to, yeah, well, all of us, mate. Just as well, it's summer season now, and I'm going to have to be heading to the beach in Barcelona. But you need to take all of this into account, and ultimately, we've given it a go. I think he would have liked to have tried again, but at this point in your career, and I'm saying this to Reece Nelson as well, I'm saying this to Eddie Nketiah, go and play. You're good enough to be key parts of a team somewhere else, in the Premier League or abroad, in the case of Nketiah with Marseille. Go and play your football, get a good salary, because we know you can do it, but it's just not going to happen here, unfortunately. So I'm really sad. I'm really sad about it, because I would love him to be the player that I think he can be in this team, but he's just not at the moment. So sell, wish him the best, and it's now about how we can replace him, or if we replace him at all.
That's kind of my next question. Where do Arsenal go next in the transfer market? Because, I think we can safely say that Arsenal will be looking to do more than what they've already done. Obviously, David Raya's coming on a permanent deal. We all knew that was going to happen. And we've just been talking about the announcement of Riccardo Calafiori. Where do Arsenal go next? Because I've been having this debate with people quite a bit over the last few days when sort of doing some radio work. It's been, well, Arsenal need a big old number 9 and all the rest of it. That lazy line that gets wheeled out straight away. Could we do with a number 9? Maybe. But for me, it's the center of that midfield. It looks really light to me. And I think we should be looking at that as a priority. Is Mikel Merino the one for you? Because we've heard that name a hell of a lot, although we don't know that it's moved any further forward than sort of conversations between Arsenal and maybe the players' representatives.
Yeah, I've been on record as liking this move. I think if he was to come into this team, he would give me Trossard vibes or Jorginho vibes, in that he's an experienced player, physical player who can handle himself in the Premier League, knows his job, very technically secure. And they are important. These guys are really important, because you can't just keep buying 22-year-olds all the time. You need established, mature professionals in your team to see you through difficult moments, to come in, maybe not expect football all the time, but be able to maintain those levels if and when they do come in. And to me, Merino won't be someone who, even like a Fabian Ruiz, for example. I mean, there were links last week, but I didn't give those much attention or much weight because I think it came from Duncan Castles, which isn't the best source here in England. But he seems to me like someone who can come in and really make an impact in this team now. And what we've struggled with is, where do we see Declan Rice? Is he going to be the 6? Is he going to be the 8? Or is he going to be a combination of both? And I think if he is going to be the combination of both, Merino can come into this team with 1 year left on his contract. He won't have a huge wage demand. He won't cost a huge amount. I think 20, 25 million is the fee that I've been seeing. And he can come in and play either alongside Rice or ahead of Rice. So that, again, goes back to the idea of tactical flexibility. Can he be someone who can play as an 8 one day? Can he be someone who plays as a double pivot another day if we go away to Anfield or away to the Etihad? Yes, I absolutely believe that. Can he be someone who even anchors the 6 if we're playing weaker opposition? Absolutely he can. So I don't think he's going to be anyone that gets people excited. And I can completely understand that, because, you know, we're in a moment now where you think, okay, we've got Calafiori in, let's blow 70 or 80 million on a Joao Neves or an Eberechi Eze or someone like that. And I completely get that and subscribe to that. But I just see him as a really seasoned, mature professional. I mean, he's 28. He's not 35, right? He's my age, 28. So it sounds ridiculous me talking about him, but I think I look at him and I see someone who can come in and give us what we need now to see us over the line. Do I think he's going to move the needle entirely? No. But I look at the midfield. I've seen a couple of Thomas Partey cameos in preseason, and I think his joints need some WD-40 because he really doesn't convince me physically anymore. And I still wouldn't be surprised to see him leave the club this summer. But if it was Merino plus someone else, I'd be delighted. If it's just Merino coming in, I still think we'd be leaving ourselves a bit short. But I think in terms of the player himself, I'd be more than fine with him coming in.
Yeah, I'm a bit like that about this one as well, Phil. Like, I look at it and I go, yeah, add something to the squad, bring something. And actually, when I kind of did, like, we did like a kind of scouting video / podcast on him, and the kind of conclusion I came to and the thing I kind of took away was, it feels like we had Granit Xhaka, right, who was this left 8 who could do a bit of the defensive stuff and tuck in when you needed him to, allow maybe Martinelli to push on a bit further because you knew that he was there to protect if needed, but could also make those runs forward, and particularly in his last season did a really, really good job of that. And I feel like Mikel Merino would do a lot of those things. And I feel like Mikel Merino is almost like us saying, we missed that Xhaka profile last season. Let's try and find another one. And this one is available for 20 odd million quid, which makes a lot of sense in today's market. He's just come off the back of winning the Euros as well. Let's go and get him. That's what it feels like to me. But I agree with you. If it was just him, then I'd be a little bit concerned about the midfield. And I know that Mikel Arteta maybe sees Kai Havertz as a midfield option. And maybe if he's confident that Gabriel Jesus is going to come back and be much stronger this season, then maybe he's looking at that. But I'm not entirely convinced that always worked. I mean, Kai Havertz, he did so well, didn't he, as a centre forward? Like, don't you think it'd be wrong now to kind of push him back into a position he's not completely comfortable in and allow all the kind of question marks around him to start again?
Could I ask you about Ethan Nwaneri? Could there potentially be space for him to come in and be a bit more of an attacking presence in that position? I mean, we've seen him in pre-season play really well, both on the right and the left. I think it could be an option, to be honest. I thought he would maybe be close this summer. But the more I've seen of him, as I said, I haven't really watched any of the games live, but the more I've seen of him from compilations and extended highlights and just generally how he carries himself on the pitch, there's a maturity there. There's a readiness that you don't often see in 17 or 18-year-olds. And I think last season, Kobbie Mainoo, for example, was someone who impressed for United in pre-season, ended up getting his chance around Christmas time and then didn't come out of the side. So I know Nwaneri is a year younger, but I do think there should be opportunities for him in this midfield, although pinning all of your hopes on a 17-year-old might not be the best idea.
No, I agree with you that he is literally knocking on the door now. He's been really impressive in the preseason games. He's looked really confident, really mature. Um, I just, my worry is that, like, going back to what I was saying about the kind of the want of a maybe sort of Granit Xhaka type player, I just don't think Ethan Nwaneri's that. I think he's someone that is a lot more attack minded, and I think that maybe his emergence and his development was partly why Arsenal were maybe more open to letting Emile Smith Rowe go than maybe not. I think that makes sense. But I still think that you need a Mikel Merino or some other type of midfielder who does have a bit more defensively about him to go into this season with, if you want to challenge on multiple fronts. And I agree with you, by the way, on Thomas Partey. When he is fit and at his best, I don't think there are many better than him in world football. The problem is he's never fit. And if he's never fit, then how often is he going to be at his best? And you're absolutely right. It's preseason, and I'm kind of trying not to get too bogged down by it. And I'm looking at him the other night and I'm thinking, well, it's only his third preseason half, if you like. And, he's getting there slowly. But you're right. He looks like he's aged 5 years over the course of the last 12 months. And that's a big worry. So I think the midfield still needs more. Is there anywhere else that you think we need to strengthen? Is there any other players that are on your radar? And I know, there are links to Victor Gyokeres. There are links to raphinha coming out of Spain at the moment as well. Obviously, not too far from you in Barcelona. So there's lots of players being talked about. But is there anyone that tickles your fancy?
We absolutely need a forward addition. That to me is clear. We can't have another season relying on Gabriel Martinelli and Bukayo Saka in the way that we have been doing. And I know Leandro Trossard was brilliant last season, a lot of crucial goals. Gabriel Jesus should be a wide option as well, whether he can play left or right. I think that's more than serviceable for Arsenal. But I think if you really have hopes and ambitions of winning the Premier League, but also going far in the Champions League, you need some more X factor. And if Martinelli is unavailable or not at his best, if Saka's carrying something and not at his best, we need an injection of pace. And I think last season, for me, looking at that squad, I watched us trudge through the pitch at the Allianz Arena because we had nobody to stretch that Bayern defense. And I see Nico Williams, who for me would be perfect, but I would be very surprised if Barcelona don't manage to get their finances together and bring him into the club after their kind of PR offensive. They've gone full Cesc Fabregas 2011 in terms of what they've done with Nico Williams this summer. Pedro Neto, again, a player I love, but the injuries are a big concern. And I know that he maybe wouldn't be playing as much as he would be at Wolves, but hamstrings are a big one for wingers. And if he's, getting injured 2 or 3 times a season and Wolves want 60 million, is that really the best use of funds? Raphinha is someone I think suits us actually, in terms of his ability to play on the right, can play on the left. Maybe doesn't have that breakneck speed, but can score goals, has a lot of creativity. Maybe he could be available on the cheap if Barcelona needs some money in terms of bringing Nico Williams and even Dani Olmo into the club. So there's a few names being bandied around. Again, we're probably going to lose Nelson. We're probably going to lose Smith Rowe, Eddie as well. So again, we've got options. Trossard, very capable. Havertz did really well towards the end of last season. Jesus can play on either side very well. But I would just like a winger, a proper winger who can sit in front of a defender and burn him, or someone that we can put on the halfway line and just go. Because I think we lack that profile at the moment. So that's who I would maybe be looking to in terms of profile. But in terms of the names, it's very difficult at the moment because for the reasons I just listed, it's not an easy market to shop in.
Absolutely. It's really, really difficult. It's a really tough market out there. And obviously the spending has been sort of, it's come down a notch, hasn't it? Like across the board. And, that's a result of some of the rules that have been put in place and all the rest of it. And, maybe for clubs like Arsenal, where it's been spend for a number of years without selling particularly well, we are in a position now where, it looks like we're going to raise some money from some of our players this summer, which is great. But at some point, I always say this, there was going to need to be a bit more of a balance found. And we've done a lot of the heavy lifting with regards to the squad. And I think Arsenal are sort of sitting there now looking for the right players. And if they're there and they're available, they've shown us that they're willing to go out and put the money on the table, but they're not going to sign frivolously. They're not going to sign for the sake of it. And I think, you know, there are a lot of Arsenal fans, at least online, that are sort of up in arms of, why haven't we got forward yet? Why haven't we done this yet? It will come. I'm sure it will come. And I think we just need to stay patient at the moment. Guys, just a quick reminder, because there's over 1,000 of you with us live right now across the platforms. Remember to leave a like on the video if you're with us on YouTube, and subscribe to the channel if you're new. If you're watching us on X, we don't always stream these to X. So make sure you come over to the YouTube channel, or you subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, wherever it is that you like to get your content from. Phil, I think we'll leave it there, my friend. I've already kept you longer than I said I would, so apologies for that. But could you let us know where people can find you, what you're up to, tell them about your brilliant podcast, where they can get it, and what's coming up?
Yeah, no worries at all. I mean, look, 5 minutes, that's an easy overspend. I've kept people for half an hour, mate, so don't worry. Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at _Phil Costa, if you still use it. I know not many people do nowadays, but I'm always on there talking about some rubbish or players, or mostly memes now, to be honest. I've given up the analysis, it's just memes. But yeah, you can find me on the Football Vision podcast, which is my podcast. Many of you will know the Arsenal Vision podcast. It kind of falls under the umbrella of this group, the Vision group, shall we say, where it's more general football. We do like weekly deep dives into different topics, clubs who have interesting projects at the moment, any crazy or wacky stories. And this summer I'm doing a anatomy of a transfer series, which is kind of assessing transfers from the whole of football, whether that could be social media teams, whether that could be data recruitment analysts, whether that's player liaison officers. So I'm kind of doing a deep dive into the different angles of what makes a transfer. And yeah, you can come and find me there. We're doing 2 episodes a week now, which is really good. And yeah, I'll be on the usual places: Arsenal Blog, Arsenal Vision, talking Arsenal. So yeah, that's my summer.
Amazing stuff. Make sure to give Phil a follow and subscribe to his podcast. I'll make sure I stick the links in the description after we finish up here as well. Thank you for tuning in to the show. As always, we'll be back on Tuesday at some point. I don't know what time yet, just whenever I feel like it. It's the summer, so that's how we're rolling at the moment. Thank you for joining us as always, and we'll see you all on the next one. Until then, take care of yourselves. Have a great evening. Goodbye.